have you seen some of the fans of the show have started memeing us with
Oh
some
yeah.
of the catchphrases? So apparently it's every time you mention Dale Carnegie's book,
Yes. And
and
you, when you
I
say, I
go, I
love
love
that.
it.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it. Apparently I speak like, is it Starsky in Starsky and Hutch with Ben
Oh,
Stiller?
is
I
that
love
right?
it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. Another one, somebody called me out for saying massive. Like I say things are massive. Oh, that is massively important. Somebody called me out.
Massive. That was more when I was naked at the start, right?
It was, well, I only saw you from the chest up, but I've heard that it's not as massive as what you like to make it to be.
You're listening to Biz Buzz. Super authentic, actionable advice.
We're going to open the kimono and show you what's inside.
I'm scared to see inside Mike's kimono.
Hey, it's Mike and Tom with Biz Buzz.
If you like geeking out over business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you.
Hello, all you biz buddies. This is Mike Janda, and I'm here with my buddy Tom Ross. We are on episode number 16 of the Biz Buds podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about dealing with perfectionism. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Michael. You can tell I just got done watching Tiger King because I legit thought you were going to say, hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Yes.
Kick us off.
Okay, here's my thoughts on Tiger King to get us started. I feel, after watching this, less quality of humanity after watching the Tiger King.
Like you want to take a shower?
Like I'm like, really? This is humanity? This is who we are in humanity?
The bit that got me.
I have the same genetic makeup of this. That's how I felt after watching Tiger King.
Yeah, I hear you on that. The bit that got me was, what's his name? Jeff. The guy with the wife and the nanny. When his wife is heavily pregnant, and he's like, oh yeah, look at this nanny. I'm going to hire her because she's like really sexy. And his heavily pregnant wife sat there. And I just thought, oh my God, like, what an idiot. I was like, I think I'd be 6 foot underground if I said that to my fiance.
Yeah. Well, I think they had some kind of swing-in relationship going on for sure. I don't know, man. It was a little bit of a letdown because everybody was hyping up the Tiger King. And for me, I was like, okay, we didn't get the big resolve at the end that I had expected. I didn't know the story or anything. Yeah. Anyway, all right. This has nothing to do with perfectionism, but it is pop culture at the moment here.
We're trying to basically say we're down with the kids.
We're
guys.
down. We're
get
down. Yeah. It was interesting, and it was captivating, and it was a lot of interesting content. I felt like the first half of the episodes were better than the last half. All right. So, dealing with perfectionism. Now getting back on track. Perfectionism is this unrelenting desire to have things be perfectly in their place, to not have any errors or mistakes, to have things be as pixel perfect as they can be. And so many creative professionals struggle with this.
Yep.
I don't know where the psychology comes from. I go back to the idea that we are critiquing insecurity into creative professionals. Right from the time they go to school, you're putting your work on the board, and then you have 20 people critique it. And so we're breeding insecurity into creative people. And I look at perfectionism as part of that we get so afraid of the critique that we get afraid to have things not be pixel perfect because we don't want to get the negative feedback. And so it just is this perpetual circle that happens of making us afraid to put ourselves out there with the product where it is right now today.
Yeah, for me, the way I think about perfectionism is just slowness. Ridiculous, unnecessary slowness that I'm so empathetic towards because I lived most of my life in that slowness. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I would say my guess would be that you've overcome perfectionism in quite a big way. Not completely, but
not completely. I still naturally, I have the OCD tendencies that any creative is going to have.
Yeah.
But I have had to overcome this pixel perfect thing. Some of it might have to do with me shaving my head, and I'll tell you a little background on that. You know, I used to be the person who it was like hairspray perfect in the 80s. You've got to get
pictures.
You've got to get your hair just perfect.
It was like the dude on Stranger Things.
It was so great, right? Yeah. So I used to be that guy. I used to be there, and it would be perfect, and you had to have it right, perfect. And shaving my head just opened up the I am who I am mindset. There's no more perfection. Now, I do get a perfect shave. You would be hard-pressed to find a little row that I miss when I shave my head.
There is not a singular follicle
on
that cranium right now.
I just shaved like an hour ago, and it is baby butt smooth right now.
Oh my God, I want to stroke it. It looks
you
amazing.
Do, right? You can see it, and it's a little bit shiny here in the camera.
It looks great.
Yep. So anyway, so I think that there's some of that. It's we have this natural tendency as creative professionals to try and have things be perfect, and at some point we have to let go of that. We have to let go. We have to accept a certain quality level, submit our work, and then move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, let's maybe talk about how we've struggled with being perfectionists, because I definitely was one. It sounds like with the hairspray you were as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like not even that long ago. I mean, certainly growing up I was, and when I was a lot younger I was. But even when I started one of my other podcasts, it took me, I think, 3 or 4 months to release the first episode. Because I refilmed it so many times, and then I watched it back, and then I was like, no, we got to redo it again. Let's change the edit. Let's tweak that second of video. It was so ridiculous, and I was paying out of my personal pocket for this with Marco, who does this show. Literally, I had to keep paying him to film the same episode again, and nothing saw the light of day. Yeah. So I was like losing money, getting no benefit because no one saw anything.
Yeah.
And looking back, it was like the craziest, most stupid thing. But when I was in it, I was like, no, it's not quite right. And, you know, that was like 3 years ago. So, you know, it's definitely in all of us. But, man, the speed of execution that comes from dropping that perfectionism feels like a superpower.
Yeah.
Because that same show, after a few months and then a year or whatever of doing it, I'd mess up. I would say stuff wrong. I'd fumble my words. And I would often say to Marco as we're recording, I'm like, just leave that in. It's more authentic. Just keep rolling. And I would do every single episode immediately in one take. I'd be cranking it out. It was like 7 days a week, just a prolific amount of content. I put out more content. You know, it took me 4 months for one episode, and then I put out like 200 episodes without batting an eyelid kind of thing. Just that really shows the difference in volume that you can achieve. And can you imagine if we were still deliberating over like, have we got the right audio branding? Let's keep, you know, like you've probably noticed every time you've sent me something, like you do great work, but when you sent me the cover art or the audio bit, I was like, yeah, love it, great.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool.
Well, I don't know. You had some opinions. You had some strong opinions in the first round, but that was the first round.
That was you know, more the nudity that people might not like.
Speaking of nudity, I am going to post the intro to this phone call today. So anyway, Tom was out laying on his porch laying out in the sun before this call, and so I jumped on, and he had on his sunglasses and a bare chest, and
this podcast is about to blow up, people.
It is. People are going to be like, send the video. I didn't have video of that. I wasn't recording at that time, but I did get a screenshot. Yes, I was the same way. So going back to when I started doing video is a big one for people because it is a struggle for a lot of people to start doing video content. When I started doing my first couple videos, which was about a year ago, and I started doing them on YouTube, before I found my niche in Instagram. So I started with some YouTube videos, and I was just experimenting, seeing what kind of content can I create here, and how does this go, and how do I even video, and how do I edit this stuff to make it engaging and interesting. Man, I would film for like 2 hours, 3 hours, and then I would edit for 4 hours, and I would get a 6-minute video out of it because I was just going and doing retakes. I would scrub to a certain spot and I would be like, oh, I don't like the way that I said that, and that was a little weird. And so I'd go and reshoot it and then go back to my desk and put in the reshot version. And the productivity was terrible. I was getting one video done, a 5-minute video done every day out of 6 hours worth of work. And that's not going to get you anywhere. So there were two things that happened. As I got more and more videos done, I got faster at editing. I got more comfortable being on camera so that I would not have to do as many retakes. And then the best part is I got comfortable with the authenticity of it. I got comfortable speaking off the cuff, not caring if I have the little here or so there that I would edit out so that it seemed like I was very eloquent. I got better at just accepting that that's okay to leave in the video, accepting a certain level of quality.
Sorry, man.
Go ahead.
Have you seen some of the fans of the show have started memeing us with
of
the catchphrases? So apparently it's every time you mention Dale Carnegie, it's
yes. And you, when you say, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I love it. Apparently, I speak like, is it Starsky in Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller?
Is that right? Oh, I love it. Yeah. Another one, somebody called me out for saying massive. Like I say things are massive. Oh, that is massively important. Somebody called me
massive. That was more when I was naked at the start, right?
It was, well, I only saw you from the chest up, but I've heard that it's not as massive as what you like to make it out to be. All right, this is completely.
We've gone to the gutter.
We've gone, people. We have gone.
All right, let me bring this back. What do you think about this as an analogy? Because I completely agree. What you've done with the video, it's so iterative. I love that. You know, you've got better one video at a time. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to happen overnight. So picture this. You have got a target that is 100 steps away from where you're stood right now. And the only way you can possibly get there is you're going to take a step and then the second step, and you're going to do 100 steps and you're going to get there. What perfectionism is doing is that you see that starting line and you run at it and you try and take a almighty jump in one, and obviously you can't jump 100 steps, so you fail. And then you go back and you start writing on a notepad and you're like, what if I just think through this? I'm going to adjust my jump, and I'm going to try and wear different shoes, and I'm going to plot the jump, and I'm going to think about how to make this jump. And you could do that forever, but you're still going to fail that jump because you just can't jump that far. Mm-hmm. So no amount of thinking or planning or trying to make it perfect is going to let you do that impossible jump. You have to just start taking the small steps one at a time.
I like it. Or in Tom's words, I love that. I love that.
I'm just very, emphatically positive about the ideas you bring to the show, man.
I guess
it's a good thing.
Yeah. My perspective on perfectionism is... Okay, so actually, you know what? Let's talk about what you just talked about and one of the principles to overcome perfectionism. And this is a principle that has been shared on a whole ton of variety of places. So I don't know where it originates from, but it's the 30-60-90 feedback rule. That instead of showing a client the product when it is at 90%, and that's when we finally feel comfortable showing it, we show it at 30% finish, 60% finish, and 90% finish in various rounds. And so going to your idea of 100 steps, don't wait until you're on step number 100 shooting at the target before you go and get feedback from whoever the stakeholder is on this specific engagement.
Yep.
Show it and involve them at 30% when it is not perfect. And then get feedback then. And then show it again at 60% when it is not perfect. And get feedback then. And then show it at 90%. And this is a way to overcome some of this perfectionism where we don't get it out because we're waiting until it's 90% perfect and we're afraid to show it to anybody because it's not quite there yet. We got to overcome that. So if you embrace this methodology of 30, 60, 90 and train your client on this methodology, tell them that you're going to involve them in the process when things are at 30% quality. So they know what they're looking at, then their expectations are 30% quality, and you're all talking on the same page in a collaborative manner early on in the engagement.
I think that's smart. That's not something I've done myself, so I can't speak to the efficacy for me, but I know you're super experienced in this area, and that makes logical sense. And I think the same principles apply to most things, including, I know a lot of our audience try and put out content and things of that nature, and it might not be a client giving you feedback at 30%, but it's the market and the wider community that you're trying to serve that gives you that feedback. And let me ask you a question, Mike. Ignore the sirens. It's pretty rough where I live in middle class land.
Yeah.
The ghetto. Let me ask you a question. Before you posted on Instagram ever, so go back however many years, could you possibly have predicted what it would be like right now in terms of everything, what your content might look like, the community around it, the nuances of the platform, the day-to-day work you do in it? Could you have guessed or hypothesized about any of that back then?
I couldn't even a year ago now. So I started my big Instagram push on April 1st last year. So I'm 1 year and 2 weeks into it. And if you scroll back to my posts, you will see a massive amount of experimentation in the first couple months of posting. And some of these posts aren't good. I left them up. They're fine, but it was just experimenting because I didn't know the nuances of the platform. I didn't know what was perfect. And I still post things that are not perfect. I had somebody give me some design bashing on my post from Monday, and I called him out on it. I was like, hey, he deleted all his comments after I called him out on it. But he was like critiquing my post. That is, the post was, things will get better, be patient. That was my post. So it was completely with the intention of being
in that.
Exactly. My intention was, hey, it's Monday. Things aren't always going to be as rough as they are right now. We're in the middle of quarantine and lockdown for coronavirus. If you're listening to this later on in after we're out of this mess, but it was a positive message to my audience saying we're going to be okay. But I did the design work in 15 minutes. From the time that I did the work and posted the post, it was a 15-minute span of time, including writing the description and everything. And it was not perfect design. I tried to make it interesting and fun and visually engaging, but it was not perfect design. It's not the cover of Communication Arts magazine. That's not what I designed there. But it was social media perfect. And I think that there's something...
Well, it was done.
It was done. And social media perfect is not cover of Newsweek magazine perfect. There is a difference.
Yeah.
Social media perfect, the standards need to be lower. Gary Vaynerchuk, who we mention almost every single episode of the BizBuds podcast, but he's the ultimate example of social media perfect. His content is rough. The visuals are rough. The video quality is rough. It is not perfect by any means. And he posts all the time and gets great engagement. So there is social media perfect and there is cover of Newsweek magazine perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. And I feel like perfectionism, it's such a tricky thing because until you've overcome the barrier of being a perfectionist, it's all cliches. You know, it's all like, done is better than perfect. And
Yeah.
something I say all the time is like, there's no perfect, but there is only better. And it's completely accurate and the right advice. But I feel like if you're a perfectionist, you hear that and you're like, that's nice. It's only when you finally break that you're like, holy crap, this is what I've been missing out on. You know, I can execute 100 times quicker than I was. This has changed my life and my business. That's the power of perfectionism.
Yeah.
Can I give a quick example?
Yes.
Because we were chatting about your early Instagram. I'm not going to name him because I don't want to be disrespectful, but a very good friend of mine who's very talented has been debating starting an Instagram and a personal brand for about a year now. And I understand that he doesn't have an enormous amount of time. I mean, none of us do, to be honest, but there are time constraints and there's reasons why it hasn't happened yet. But I would say the biggest reason is that it's just been completely overthought to death, the same way that it took me 4 months to post that first personal podcast episode. And I've seen mood boards and I've seen all different layouts, what the post could look like. And I've seen potential content and mind mapping and all these planning stages. And actually the answer is you just put your first post out, no matter what it looks like. And then you try and make the next one a little bit better. And then the next one a bit better. It is the only way, because you can't project the nuances of the platform. You can't project what people are going to resonate with and what they're not. You just have to dive in and then adapt to what's happening in real time. It is the only way. And it's so frustrating having come out the other side of this myself when I see friends and loved ones overthink it to death. And what happens is they just get frozen and either give up or just never get anything out at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the stop in your tracks mindset. It's the mindset of, if I can't win the marathon, I might as well not even start the marathon. So the gun goes off and people start trying to find their pace, and you're just standing at the start line thinking, oh, how am I going to win this thing? So you don't even start running. But life or marketing or business is all just one step at a time, progressing, adapting, pivoting. And so you've got to start moving so that you can start figuring out what is the real strategy to winning this marathon. Maybe that's a little bit of a forced metaphor, but I believe in that principle that you're better off starting and adapting than not starting at all.
Yeah.
And it's too bad for your friend who has been in this deer in the headlights, frozen at the start line moment and not been able to just get started. Imagine where they could be had they started posting rough content and pivoting over time. They could have been building a great audience by now.
Yeah. Oh, they got all the talent.
Yeah.
And, the personality and everything else, but they just never crossed the start line.
Now, some of this, I believe, comes from the idea of comparison. And it inhibited me from starting down my adventure of producing content, because I would look around and think, oh man, what if I start and nobody likes my stuff? What if I try and put my best self out there and nobody starts following me? Then I'm a failure. I'm an imposter. I think that in my head I'm good, but what if nobody else thinks that I'm good? And I think that that's such an inhibiting mindset that probably ties into this idea of perfectionism, where you are afraid that your best effort is not going to yield the result that you hope that it yields. And a lot of that probably comes from comparing yourself to other people already on the race. People who are at mile number 20.
500.
Exactly. They're at mile number 20 and you're still at the start line of this marathon.
Yep.
And they're almost finished running the race. And you're making a comparison between you and them, and it creates fear.
Which is nuts. I posted this on my LinkedIn today, which is weird, but I had a post saying don't compare your current position to someone's step 50.
Yeah.
If you're on step 1, look at someone else's step 1 and step 2.
Yeah.
To figure out how they went from step 1 to step 2. And it's crazy the number of people who talk to me and they say, oh, I aspire to be the next Chris Doe or whatever. And I feel crippled that I might not be at his level. I'm like, of course you're not. He's been doing this for like 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you haven't done anything yet. What are you talking about? Like, talk to me in 20 years of like ruthless hard work and execution, and then see where you're at.
Yeah.
You just have to start.
Yeah.
I've
you know, to mention Chris, it's been 5 years or more of producing content, of YouTube videos. Go to the old ones and see where it is compared to the new ones. And there's been massive progress made in his ability to be on camera and to present ideas, and the quality of production. It all goes up. You can go back to mine a year ago and you'll see some content that is nothing compared to what I can produce now today. And it's all just because you got to get in there and start running the race.
I love it.
I love that. I love that.
To get it in.
It's massively valuable, Dale Carnegie. There you go. So for those that are playing the proposed drinking game, there are a handful of drinks that you need.
In
to
the
take.
words of Gary Vee and Dale Carnegie, I love it.
Okay, here's another principle that I have to share that I've shared this a couple times in various pieces of content, and it fits so well here. And I believe this wholeheartedly, and design perfectionists of the world would fight me on this, I think, but 80% quality is sufficient to yield 100% of the result in most cases when it comes to design, business, marketing, creativity, all those things. 80% will yield 100% of the return that you're hoping for. So
let's talk about that 20% that's missing. Google law of diminishing returns.
Yeah. I love the law of diminishing returns. I talk to my kids about that all the time because it was the only thing that I learned in my econ class during the semester that I had a 0.9 GPA in college. So the law of diminishing returns, super valuable concept. But to apply the law of diminishing returns to that, it's you may spend 80% of your time on the final 20% quality that will make no difference to the efficacy of whatever you're trying to produce.
Yep. And often it's like 40% of your time spent on the final 1%, which really doesn't matter. You know, it's like, imagine, just looking at him today, imagine Mike has spent 4 hours shaving his head to make it so perfect.
So shiny and nice. Yeah.
And he spends an additional 9 hours just repeatedly shaving this perfectly shaven head.
Yeah.
He's not going to get a lot of benefit from that, people.
Yeah.
It's just wasted time.
It's just wasted time. So this is, to me, this is such an important principle. I'm going to reiterate it again. You have to start getting comfortable with 80% quality. You have to look at your 80% as this is sufficient to yield the return that I'm looking for. Now, how do we do that? How do we get over the idea of not pushing the pixels around for the other, to try and yield the other 20% that our perfectionist brain is trying to accomplish? So the first thing that I would say relating to that is set a deadline to stop. Set a deadline to stop. Now, take this metaphor for a designer. Let's say it's an interior designer, And an interior designer decorating, or an interior decorator decorating a space, if you don't have a deadline, you can literally move the plant from one side of the table to the other side of the table forever, trying to find just the right spot for the plant.
We talked about Parkinson's law, right?
Yeah. Not Parkinson's disease, but Parkinson's law. Yeah. That you will fill the time available for the task. So if you have 1 hour to complete something, you'll do it in 1 hour. If you have 10 hours to complete the same task, you will do it in 10 hours. This is Parkinson's law. Now, this is the mindset. We have to apply this to ourselves. It's so effective when you have perfectionist tendencies to set a deadline for yourself and say, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 hours to do this task. And at the end of 2 hours, I'm going to assess it. And if it is at 80% quality, in my opinion, I am going to send it. That can be a rule that you set for yourself to overcome some of this perfectionism, because if you give yourself 10 hours to do the same task, it will take 10 hours, because you can move the plant from one side of the table to the next, back and forth, for the extra 8 hours that you gave yourself in a timeline.
I love that. Very, very smart advice. Oh, I can't stop
I love that. It's massively important, Dale Carnegie.
So the one guy who kind of memed this is like laughing hysterically now, and everyone else is like, I
hopefully
do
he
not
listens.
get what they're talking about.
Hopefully he listens to
he's given up now.
Yeah,
he's given up long ago.
He won't hear these
better.
great inside jokes. Yeah.
So what do you think about this? I would like to issue a challenge to the listeners to put out something imperfect, because I'd love to see this out in the community and maybe rally around it. Because I had my weekly coaching call yesterday, and we've got a self-diagnosed perfectionist in the group, and he was meant to do all this stuff for his homework and he didn't. And I said, okay, cool, I'm going to set this week's homework now, but instead of having until next week to do it, you've got the final 30 minutes of this call to do it. And I want you to take a story that he told us earlier, and I want you to turn that into an Instagram post. I want you to make the post, add it to this new profile that you set up, add a description, do some hashtags, publish it, and then message us when you're done.
Wow.
And this is what you're talking about with the time limit, right?
Yeah.
And he said, like, it was painful. He was frantically there trying to get it done. He had the accountability of the group, but he got it done, and he messaged it, and everyone commented and were like, way to go, man. And then he messaged me and said, you know, I do feel like I've grown, come out the other side of that. That was a great exercise. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I was like, you have just leveled up your confidence. You've shed a little, not all of it, but a little bit of this perfectionism that is crippling you right now. And now you just got to do it again and again and again and again. And so I'm going to do a case in point right now. I used to refilm my Instagram stories all of the time, and I used to obsess over them and did the lighting look right. So I'm going to hit record while we're on this podcast now. And
nice.
Let me know if you want to do the same. So I am currently sat here recording with Mike Janda for BizBuds. We're talking about perfectionism, and to prove a point, I'm just doing a one-take story on my Instagram stories. As you can see, the lighting is crazy. It makes me look like I've got a really weird shaped head. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just talking off the top of my head. I've got no backdrop. I'm messing up my words a little bit. I'm distracted because I'm podcasting at the same time. It doesn't matter. I'm going to put out this ridiculous video. I'm going to look like a bit of an idiot, and it's imperfect. I couldn't care less. I've just made a point. So listen to the full episode to hear what on earth we're talking about. But I'm going to jump back in now. Anyway, perfectionists out there, use this as inspiration to actually put out some random, crazy, imperfect thing, because it doesn't matter and no one cares. Right, so there we go, right? And I just hit publish on my story. There's no text over to make it more consumable or all the stuff you should be doing. It's probably one of the worst looking stories I've ever put out. And now, 1,000 people or whatever are going to see that. I do not care. I don't care.
Well, a post like that shows authenticity. And we can get caught up in the visual perfection, the right hashtags, the right lighting, the right message, the words that you use. We can get caught up in all of that. But what you just created was 100% perfectly authentic. It's so when you're judging perfectionism and your own work, what are you gauging it on? Because Tom just created a perfectly authentic Instagram story post. So let's judge the right criteria before we decide that we're not going to post something, because there is value in authenticity, and that was perfectly authentic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's not just about, my words there. I've put out visual stuff that's been imperfect too. I've got stuff from my designer that I work with, and I've seen a typo that I left in it. And I've said, I can't be bothered to request that she makes a change, wait a couple of hours to hear back from her, download all the images again, and then post it. So I just post it knowing there's a glaring typo and it looks really dumb. And we've had stuff in my carousels where there's been a legacy bit of image where as you scroll it has a weird seam and it doesn't flow. And I've known that's going to happen. That's something that would just cripple most designers. They'd be like, I can't share that. That makes me feel so OCD and it bugs me to death. And it used to with me the same. And now I'm like, I don't care. Because I realize how slow it is when you live in that world of perfectionism. Like I say, I can't be asked to go back and forth with my designer. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just posting this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. About that. Okay.
So what challenge can we do for people? What's an actionable challenge?
How about spend 15 minutes maximum from the time you start till the time you post, creating a piece of content with this message. And I'll give the hard part to Tom. What's the message?
Oh, man. What about literally it just says in the design, I made this in 15 minutes.
And then write a description that says...
Giving context.
Giving context.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. Okay.
Whatever it is. And then mention us in the description, put it in your stories if you want, and tag us up, more Janda and Tom Ross Media on Instagram. Tag us in the post if you want. We will comment and we will be like, yes, well done for shedding just a bit of that perfectionism. Well done for getting closer to not being a perfectionist. I want to see what people come up with in 15 minutes.
Okay, and to start this, Tom, you and I need to remember as this episode gets closer to launch in a few weeks to do this same challenge.
That would be fun. So what I would say is, let's make this slightly harder. People have to set a timer on their smartphone, and when the timer goes off, they have to, like they're in an exam at school, they have to drop everything they're doing. I don't care if you're like halfway through a letter form or something. Yeah. You have to stop it no matter what. No cheating.
Okay.
Badge of honor here.
All right, good. I like it. And to do this challenge, my high recommendation is you start with the text, I made this in 15 minutes, and get that onto a piece of white square canvas so that you at least have the message in place before you go and polish it up into whatever it's going to be. And then, you know what, let's give them an extra 5 minutes to write a description for the post that gives some context and
we'll allow it.
Yeah. We'll allow the extra 5-minute buffer on the end.
All right. So have we got any bonus tips? Because, we got 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're maybe not quite at the conclusion tennis match. Have we got some quick fire tips people can use to shed that perfectionism?
I think that, the challenge with perfectionism is you're causing yourself undue stress. You're creating anxiety in yourself about creating something that is perfect, and it's causing you undue stress. Your life has enough stress in it already. Obsessing over pixel perfection or placement perfection or execution quality perfection is causing you undue stress in your life. So extract that stress from yourself. Get that off your plate. Do not expect perfection in the quality of work. Expect 80%. And 80%, I believe, is free of typos, free of misplaced elements, free of mess, but it may not be pixel perfect.
Yeah. I would say that outside of the obvious benefits to your business, it is a tremendous asset for your mental health. Because for me, so much stress and anxiety stemmed from my perfectionism. It was really difficult. Like, imagine that story or this podcast or whatever. Before I'd have to be like, okay, I need to get my whole room just so. I need to get the light right. I need to do a test bit of footage. Does that look okay? No, let's tweak it. And we're going to tweak it again. And I'm going to watch it back after we've done it and obsess and be like, oh no, it could have been better. It's so anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
It is terrible for your mental health. Whereas every time I do something like that one take story and I'm like, cool, that's out to the world, I feel like the opposite happens. I feel no anxiety, and if anything, I feel a little bit of growth in confidence. Where I'm like, oh, that was fun. It is night and day. You will make yourself a miserable ball of stress if you obsess over the details relentlessly.
Yeah. Good. I just thought of a post that I'm going to do because last week I posted a walkthrough of my studio space. And I had everything perfect. I had the lighting perfect. I had my desk was perfect. I hid my wires perfectly. And here I am a week later from shooting that, and I've got piles of paper on the floor. I've got a stack of books in the corner. I've got a dumped over bottle of ibuprofen on the side here. I've got an empty protein shake bottle that's sitting on my desk. I have mess around me. And I'm going to do a little story post after we're done with this that is showing the reality of my workspace as I'm in it. Because I think so many people are probably looking at my post and my video saying, oh my gosh, that's just so great. That his space is amazing. Well, my space is nice. I love my space and I love to work in it, but it is messy like everybody else's when I don't make it perfect for a post. I feel bad. Like that.
When I see people's perfect workspaces, I think that I suck because mine doesn't look like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So watch my story because I'm going to share that here in a few minutes and give people the real insight to my workspace.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, any final actionables? I think, like with so much stuff we talk about, it's taking these small steps. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying you need to throw caution to the wind and put out the least perfect thing you've ever done immediately. But I think just lean outside of the comfort zone a little bit each day. And the same way, we always say, like, everyone's obsessed with like finessing and refining their design talent. You equally need to work on your business talent, and you equally need to work on your self-development, which includes things like perfectionism, because they all mesh together. So the same way you're going to take that, Skillshare Illustrator course, maybe spend a few weeks hardcore, reading up on perfectionism and trying to implement little wins and move the needle on that.
Yeah.
Because that's going to have more long-term benefit, I think, than some design course.
Yeah. And I think stop comparing yourself. We didn't hammer on this too much. We did a little bit, but stop comparing your 30% to somebody else's 100%. Stop comparing your step number 4 in the marathon to somebody else's mile 20. And we talked a little about that, but I think that that's such an important takeaway. And that's where a lot of this perfectionism and this stopped in our tracks sentiment comes from. It comes from the idea that we're comparing ourselves to somebody who's much farther along than we are. So stop making that comparison. And I think that it will help you overcome some of this perfectionism when you compare yourself to you yesterday versus to John, who is 17 years your senior.
I'm having to hold back from saying it now.
I love that. I love that. Is what Tom wants to say.
I just love Mike. He's a great dude.
It's good, man. All right. Wrapping up. You want to take us out, Tom? You want to do a tennis match on this? A little...
it will have to be a very quick tennis match.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Don't try and leap the 100 steps. The only way to get there is one small step at a time. No shortcuts.
Good. 80% quality is almost always sufficient to yield 100% of the return you're looking for.
Don't look at other people's highlight reel. Realize there's a whole lot of chaos behind the scenes, like with Mike's desk. Same thing with their logo sketches. A lot of people put out perfection, but it's just not real.
Practice the 30-60-90 feedback rule. Start involving the stakeholders in your project at 30% finish, 60% finish, and 90% finish, instead of waiting until 90% finish and then showing it, because this causes undue anxiety in the process, and it in fact inhibits the collaboration that can make the product even better when you collaborate with the client earlier on in the engagement.
Schedule in little uncomfortable moments of pushing through that comfort zone and putting out something imperfect, and make that a regular ongoing task, because you'll be amazed at what it does for your mental health, your confidence, and your speed of execution.
And set a deadline to stop. This one I think is so important. Give yourself a set amount of time to complete a task. 1 hour, 2 hours. But if you don't have a deadline to stop and you have forever to work on something, then you can spend forever working on it. And it just feeds the perfectionism that inhibits you from executing it all.
And on that note, do participate in the challenge. 15-minute hard stop. Put out your imperfect piece, design, piece of content, whatever it is. Tag us up, and we can't wait to rally around you and support our fellow imperfect humans.
Awesome. All right. Tom, you want to take us out? I started us up.
Cool. So we really hope this episode was helpful. I have to say, and this is us being our honest selves, we had a chat at the start of this podcast in that we still have not really promoted it. This is a bit of an underground secret right now, so we appreciate every single listener so much, because we are going to shout about it more. We're going to spread the word more proactively. But for now, for our loyal community that support this show, you mean the absolute world, and it is growing, and we see people spreading the word all the time. So on behalf of Mike and myself, just a huge thank you. Please keep doing that. We appreciate it a ton, and keep reaching out on social, chatting with us, letting us know if you're enjoying the show, because we're having some amazing conversations with the listeners, and you guys are the best.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And use the hashtag BizBudsPodcast. And we also appreciate comments and reviews on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
Bye. That was a weird bye. Bye.